To Lab 3. Lab 3, as you can see, we're going to be adding code for collecting the food items and keeping score. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to name the food items. So I unlock my items layer and I click on my tab here. Now I click in the gray area outside the stage and I select one of my food items and I name that instance name item 1. Make sure you're using your underscores, guys, okay? I click out here, back in my gray area, and I click on my next item, and we call this one item 2. And I click out in the gray area again, I come on down to my next item, and I call this one item 3. I click in the gray area again, and then I scroll to my last item, and I call this food item item 4. It's very important you do name these exactly the way they'd want you to name them. So now I'm going to lock items layer and I'm going to unlock the character layer. I'm going to come on up to the lives here and click on this first one. I click on instance name. I'm going to name him Life 1. Click in the gray area, click the next one, Life 2. Click in the gray area, click the third guy, and we'll call him Life 3. Click enter, and then I'm going to lock my character layer. One of the things we need to do in our coding is to declare our variables. What are variables? Variables are things that change. Our item score is going to change. The character is going to pick up all 4 items, but he starts out at 0. So every item he collects will increase that score. So this item score is going to vary. The same thing with the lives. As each fireball hits the player, he's going to lose a life. So it's going to go from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 to lose the game. All right? So these are both variables because the numbers in them is not going to be the same every time. So now we're going to go into our code layer and we're going to add some code. So I click up here, my code layer, and I'm going to go into my copy code, and I'm going to go down to my lab 3. And I'm going to grab from line 42 to line 43. And I'm going to right click copy. Then I come back over here to Dragon Tamer. Open up my actions frame. And I'm going to go right after the stop. The reason we're going right up here is because where do you declare variables? You're going to always declare your variables first thing. So I'm going to paste them here. Right click paste. Now I'm going to check my syntax. It's right after the stop code. Check my syntax. My syntax is fine. If I didn't get a click, if I got errors here, I'd fix my errors. So now I know you're wondering, how is the player going to collect the food? Well, we're going to do a hit test. Do we have to do a hit test where we do the coordinate thing? No. The reason why is we're not concerned about the coordinates of the food item, right? It's not like the maze where it has a specific location. So we're just going to have the boundary of the food item hitting the boundary of the player, or vice versa, okay? So the hit test just tells it if item 1 and item 2 collide. So then we have our hit test here. We're testing to see if the item and the player have a collision. If they do, what happens? The item, the score is going to go up. The item score is going to go up 1. And then that item's going to go up in the storage area so you can see that he got that item. So now we're ready to add more copy code. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to come to, looks like it's line 47, and I'm going to go, wow, this is going to be a long one, all the way down to line 75. See all that? We've got a long bunch of code all the way from line 47 clear to line 75. So you right click copy, then you come back in your lion tamer game, you open up your actions frame, you come clear to the end past the last curly brace, okay, and you paste in your code. Now when you check your syntax, if everything clicks, you're all right, and we'll run the test. Okay? If not, what are you going to do? If it didn't run, make sure your code is in the right place. It should be at the very end of your last scrap of code that you wrote, all the way to the bottom. Okay? And if that didn't solve your problem when you run your program, make sure that you've named your item. See, here's this name for this particular item, and it's called item 1. So now I'm going to run my code. Control Enter. And let's see if our prince collects food, if it goes where it's supposed to. That's good. That's for that one. Yeah, good for that one. So all the food items collect just like they're supposed to. So what's supposed to happen after you collect all your snacks? Well, you're supposed to make a run for the castle. And that should take you to the win screen until, of course, you make your next level, right? So obviously the next thing we're going to do is add our goal. So I click and add the layer here. And I make sure this layer is called goal. And if it isn't underneath the code layer, just drag it there. Okay, I click in frame 1. Then I go get my goal. And I drag it here in the empty spot. So the next thing I do is I take my alignment buttons, window, align. Now I center it to the stage, make sure it's aligned to the stage, center it, and align it to the top. So the next thing I do is I name my instance goal. Now I lock my goal layer. Now, how do you know when the player is able to win? Okay, this case he's collected the 4 food items. He can go to the goal now. So this is what this is saying. They're checking to see if he has all 4 food items. Okay. Then they're doing a goal hit test. Did the player actually hit the goal? If both these conditions are true, then you go and stop at the win screen until you make a level 2 screen, right? You know that I'm right. All it does is it checks to see if there's 4 things collected and check to see if the bounding box of the player hits the bounding box of the goal. So now we're ready to code the goal. So I come back up here to my code layer. I'm going to come to my copy code. I'm going to go all the way down here to line 79. And I'm going to drag all the way from line 79 to line 86. So I'm going to right click copy. And I'm going to come back to the Dragon Tamer game. I'm going to open my actions frame. And I go all the way to the end of the code and click enter. And I'm going to paste my new code underneath that, Control V. So now I'm going to check my syntax. If I get an error code here, maybe I haven't gotten all my curly braces. Make sure you're dragging and dropping everything you're supposed to, okay? Now, in order to test my game out, I need to make a win layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock all my layers. I just click the lock twice, and I'm going to click in frame 2. Now I'm going to hold down my control key. I'm going to drag over all these, make sure I got them all. Now I'm going to hit F7 on my keyboard, and that'll put a blank keyframe on all of those. Or you can do them individually if that's your thing. So now I'm going to name my new layers. I can come up here to frame 2 on my code layer. Just click there where it says label. I'm going to call this one win with a capital W. Just click enter. And on layer 3, I call this one lose with a capital L. So now, of course, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my background. So I'm going to click on my background layer on layer 2. Now, of course, I'm going to add my win background. So then the first thing I'm going to do is align it. So I click my window. I go down to align. I align it to the left, and I align it to the top. Of course, the next thing I do is I go get my lose screen. I come on up to lose. I drag my lose screen on here, and I click my alignment window, align to the left, align to the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my win and lose screen text. So I'm going to find where I'm going to put this. And I'm going to click on my items layer on frame 2. And I kind of come down to win text. So I'm going to drag this on here. When you're done with that, you can go to the next frame, the lose frame. You put your text for the lose frame in here. I can drag it and drop it here. Now if I want to change the text, all I have to do is make sure I'm on selection tool, double click the text. Now I'm inside the text, and I can change this book from old Bookman style to something else if I'd like. I can go chiller. Alright, I can change the color here to red maybe. So now I just click the blue arrow to get out. And if you wanted to change the windscreen text, you could do the same thing here. You just click on here. Just double click on your text. And you can click on your T and select everything. And just change it to what you want. Change the color, size, type. That's a little better. I'm going to click on the blue arrow and come on out. So now I'm going to run the game. I'm going to go Control Enter. We're going to see if we can collect our snacks and go win the game. I collected all 4 snacks, so I'll go back. There you go. So you won it. You can't lose it right now, but you definitely can win it. So there's your game. If it didn't win, if it didn't work, what you do? Make sure that you named your label for your win and lose screen, and make sure that you got all your gold text, and you put it at the very end of your code. Okay, to go on to level 4, make sure that your player can get all 4 food items. Make sure that the game moves to the win frame when the player reaches a goal after collecting all the food items. Lock all the layers and save your file. Welcome to Lab 4. We're going to add an enemy that's a fire. And he's going to move around the maze. And it's really going to be a cool enemy to make. It looks like he's making his own decisions. You know that's not true. But it'll look like that. So right now there's no challenge in the game. It's very easy to win it. So now we're going to add a little bit of challenge. Little fireballs are going to move around the maze. So you're going to have to maneuver around the fireballs to get your food items. So now, of course, we get to add our enemies. So first we add a layer. So I click my Add a Layer button. I call this layer Enemy. And I move it underneath the code layer. I click on frame 1. Then I go get me an enemy. Fire, right? I'm going to click and drag that and put it somewhere above the player. And I'm going to click instance name and call this one Enemy 1. Okay, what are we going to do with the flame? We're going to give it what people call AI, Artificial Intelligence. And basically we're going to control the flame's movement with if and else if statements. So that'll give it a randomness to the direction it chooses. Okay, up to this point we've been coding on the code layer. Just like we did a little coding on the ship in the last game, this game we're going to do some coding on the flame itself. It's complicated code for the way the flame behaves, so pasting it on the symbol is going to make it a little easier. So we're going to put all our coding on this flame. So now what I want to do is I want to add some, to the actual enemy symbol here, I want to add some code. So I click on the enemy frame 1. I'm going to open up the actions frame. And it should say enemy 1 here. If it doesn't, unclick the thumbtack here. And then click back here. And then click it on enemy 1. So this is what you named the instance earlier. But what we're going to do is we're going to code here. Now we were going to deal with an onload event. What's going to happen with an onload event? An onload event is what happens when a symbol is loaded onto the movie frame for the first time. So after we do our onload event, what are we going to do? We're going to define for the symbol what different directions it can go. It can go left, it can go right, it can go up, and it can go down. And it describes in coordinate terms what that means. So now that I've given you all that explanation, we're just going to load it from our copy code. We come on down to our next declaration here. We're going to go from line 90 all the way down to 103. So we right-click copy. I'm going to come back into Dragon Tamer. I'm going to open up my actions frame again. Now I'm in my actions frame right here. I'm not on the code layer. See that? Don't make a mistake and put it on the code layer. It won't work. See, there's nothing on here. So all I have to do is right-click and paste. So now I check my syntax. The next thing we want to do is we want to randomize the direction. Now that we've defined the direction, we want to pull up the flame's movement randomly. See, here's the math random function. he has 4 directions he can go, and so we define one as 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then we tell it, to pick one. Whatever this number is going to come up randomly. That's how you give it the appearance of randomness, using your random function. So now I'm going to go get my next copy code. I come on down, and I'm going to go between line 107 and line 118. Get that last curly brace now. Right click copy. Come back to Dragon Tamer. Open up your actions frame. And go right before that last curly brace. Click enter. Then paste your code there. Then do your syntax check. So I've built me a get direction function. It's not enough for me just to build the get direction function. I've given a name. Now I got to call it, like Fido. You can give your dog a name, Fido, but he's not going to come until you call him. So you got to call your function here. I got to call my get direction function. So just before that last curly brace, I click enter, and I'm going to put in here get dir parentheses and a semicolon. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get me some more code and come after this last curly brace. Give me a couple spaces here, and I'm going to minimize this, come back into my copy code, and I'm going to go into my move enemy code. Right click copy, go back to my Dragon Tamer game, open up my actions frame, and I'm just going to click it here, paste. And now I'm going to click my syntax, check my syntax. So now you're going to check your syntax. Then you're going to run your code with a control enter. And your flame should go straight until it leaves some direction, okay? If that didn't happen, what you need to do is you need to do this. You need to check your code. Make sure you didn't forget to put the get dir in there. Make sure it matches the example on this page here, page 15 of 20 on Lab 4 exactly. Go back through, make sure, check this code out. Okay? Another thing is, make sure if there's errors, just fix them. And make sure that you coded the actual flame itself and not the frame. See how this has an underline in here? If this has a colon instead of an underline, you coded the frame itself and not the enemy. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I'm, let me undo my enemy here. See this here? This colon? There shouldn't be anything on this colon. Okay? It should be on this one with the underline. Okay, so let me undo this one. I'm coming on out. Okay, see? If I just click on the frame itself, that isn't right. I have to be on the actual character. So I click out here in the gray area. I come on the flame, and that's where my code should be. It shouldn't be clicking on the frame. See that? The difference between the frame and the enemy itself. So what you do is if you put it on the frame and not the enemy, just cut it and paste it. Just come over here, go Control A, select everything, go Control X to cut it, and then click out here, then click on the flame, then open this up, and you have the underscore, enemy underscore 1. Just go Control V and paste it right in there. That's how you would fix the mistake. Okay, the last thing we're going to do in Lab 4 is we're going to make the flame hurt the player. So to begin this, if we're referring to something outside of the flame, and we're coding the flame itself, we have to use this word underscore root. That means this character called player does not exist inside the flame. It exists outside the flame. So that's what underscore root means. Is go to the root to find this character. We're also going to use the word this. This just refers to the symbol itself. That's all it is. Well, actually, we're not going to code the player to get hurt just yet. What we're going to do is we're going to code the flame to stay within the bounds of the maze. So here you go. If it hits, so it's hitting the boundaries of the maze. So once again, you need your XY stuff here with the bounds because we're dealing with the maze again, right? It's a maze hit test. Remember all that stuff? It's just a little more complicated because we're coding it inside the fire character. So now I'm going to go inside the character and where it says move enemy, I'm going to add the comment and hit maze. Now I'm going to add code to the almost the very end. I'm going to go right before this last curly brace. Click enter here. That's where I'm going to put the new code I'm going to copy from Project Copy Code and minimize this. Come here and get my next bunch of code. It's a bunch of code here, all the way from line 129 to 144. So I right click and copy. And I come back into Dragon Tamer. I open up my actions clip again. And I right click paste. So now I click my check syntax button. Everything clicks back fine. If it doesn't, check your code. Make sure that you've got everything before that last curly brace. So now we're going to run our code again. We're going to make sure that the enemy stays within the lines of the maze, which he does. If that isn't working for you, what you're going to do is you're going to check your code against this code here on page 18 on lab 4. Make sure everything's right. If that didn't solve it, make sure that the test code was right here on your enemy 1 and not in some other place. That's why we do this. That's why we lock it with this clip here. So before you move on to lab 5, make sure your enemy moves randomly around the maze. And lock all the layers of the timeline and save your file. And you're ready for lab 5.